Hello and welcome to the Dream Architect Live with Bryan Sweet and Brittany Anderson from Sweet Financial Partners. Bryan and Brittany, how are you today?
Wonderful.
Doing great, Eric.
Woohoo! I'm so glad to be back with you. Brittany, what are we talking about today?
Well, in the last episode, we talked about not letting others should on you.
Mm-hmm.
So we gave some examples of what that might look like, both just in day-to-day life and also as it relates to your wealth plan and your money. And now we get to talk about your future and what that might mean and how it's so darn important to just embrace fully what it is that you want to continue on this path or this communication of not letting the naysayers hinder you, and to understand that not everybody is going to love, like, or embrace, what you stand for and what you want in your future. And that's okay.
Yeah. Okay. Bryan, what about you? Where do we start with this? Where are you starting?
Well, I think the thing that I wanted to maybe point out to start today was most people don't realize, what they can accomplish. And the reason most people don't accomplish more is not that they are doing the wrong things, but they've got the wrong expectations as to how fast it can get done.
Okay.
And so they give up too soon. And then their dream or their values kind of go by the wayside. And an example of that, and there's a great book by a gentleman by the name of Darren Hardy. And if you like a morning ritual and you want to start your day with something uplifting other than the Dream Architect life, he has Darren Daily, which is a really great 5 to 7 minute kind of a get your day started podcast also. But he's got a book called The Compound Effect. And he said your life is really a compounding effect, and things happen over a long period of time. And it's the little decisions done over a long period of time that lead to really big results. Quick example that maybe everybody can relate to. Let's say you're a pop drinker. And maybe you drink 3 cans of pop a day. And you said, well, that's not probably the best for me. I'm going to cut that back to 1 a day. Well, after the first day, you're probably not going to notice any different. You probably haven't lost any weight. You probably feel exactly the same. But if you looked 30 days later, you're probably feeling a little better. You probably maybe lost a couple of pounds because you didn't get as much sugar. You do that for 6 months, and all of a sudden, maybe you're down 10, 15 pounds. You got more energy and you know what to do with. And so it's having those expectations that it's going to take some time, but I got to consistently do this for each period of time for that result to actually occur.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I just give a little context here to our non-Midwestern listeners? When he says pop, he means a soda. I just had to pick on you a little bit there.
Yeah.
Soda. Yeah. Soda for our non-Midwestern.
Isn't that like baking soda or what is? I'm not sure what you're referring to, Brittany. But
oh gosh, no. I think Bryan, you bring up just a great point. It's making those little decisions for your future that are going to or can add up to great result. So I think about this too. If you have spent, let's just think about the retiree. If you're listening to this and you are either at or really, really near retirement, you have made a culmination of decisions that has got you to this point, right? You've spent your life making decisions around making money, right? Like you've chosen different paths. You've maybe started a business. You've, accumulate up to this point. Now it's time for you to make and design your life. So that's what we're talking about here. The whole point of this podcast, when you think about the Dream Architect life, it's taking control of your future and doing the necessary things to really help you create and achieve what you want most. And I think too, along the way, Bryan, you and I have talked at length about this, but there's going to be instances where people just flat out either don't like you, don't like your message. I mean, there may be people that have tuned into this podcast and tuned right back out because they don't want to talk about their future. They don't want to hear this kind of thing. They don't want to sit down and take the time. It doesn't resonate with them. But I bet the people that are still listening and that are on this journey, they're absolutely having a great time, and they're listening and they're implementing some of the things that we're talking about because it matters to them and it resonates with their value system. So, I think about my own personal happening or story. I speak. I've had the great pleasure of speaking on stages across the US. And there's this one presentation in particular. It was in front of a lot of women. I spent a ton of time preparing, weeks preparing. I had given, so much thought and time and attention. And I told a story that was really personal and made me really vulnerable. And it was about, my relationship with my father and what happened through that and kind of what I've overcome. And I get to the end of it, and there was feedback cards. So every person in the audience gave a feedback card on this particular talk that I did. And the amount of positive commentary was amazing. I mean, to the point where it had me in tears, in joyful tears, because of how many great things people said and just the impact I was able to leave. So I'm flipping through these cards and I come across one. And this particular person said, "Felt like a canned speech." And it was like a dagger through my heart. And, in that instance, I started rethinking literally my whole path and speaking career. And should I really be doing this? Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe my story doesn't matter. Maybe this is something that it doesn't feel sincere. And all these horrible things went through my head. Now, fortunately, I surround myself with a lot of great people and people who are uplifting and can help redirect, Mr. Sweet being one of them. And, the conversation was, Brittany, not everybody is going to resonate with what you say. And not everybody is going to like or love you or what your path is or what your journey is or what you're pursuing. I have a speaking coach that made it very clear there's a big difference between constructive feedback where things didn't hit or points didn't, sync, but you're going to see a theme in that. And my point is that as you're looking at what you want for your life, it doesn't have to be speaking on a stage and getting negative feedback. It can be something as simple as deciding what you want for your future, deciding how you want to spend your time, who you want to spend it with. You have to understand that not everybody is going to agree with that decision. And not everybody is going to like your story and your journey. But the ability to step away from those shoulds, as we talked about in the last episode, is really what's going to give you the freedom to make decisions for the future.
Yeah. And I remember that very, very clearly, Brittany. And I think the point I'm going to take out of this is this point. Brittany's exceptional about keeping positive and not letting people should on you. So she's always conscious of it. I had to almost like walk her back from the cliff on this one because it was so noticeable. This one person had this big impact. And so the thing that reminds me is somebody that's clearly got a vision and knows where her future is. If they can get distracted by one person, the average person has a tough time. That's why this topic is so important, because it's just easy to fall into that trap, if you will, where somebody says something and you take it to heart. And literally she had hundreds of other people. It was all like excellent and the best talk I've ever heard and, life-changing. She didn't remember those. I had to remind her of those. That one person, just kind of overtook her thought process for a long time. But, that is such a huge thing. And I just wanted to relate that because you're, always optimistic. I mean, if I need like an energy boost, I know where I'm going.
Yeah, I've seen that a lot on this podcast, especially. But I think it's what we need to remind ourselves, and it's so hard to do this. At least for me, it's really hard. That everybody comes with their own baggage. Everybody comes with their own preconceived notions. So a couple of things you said there, Brittany. Number one, that person could have had a really bad morning. They got cut off in traffic. Their 2-year-old spit up on them. Their boss yelled at them. So now they're coming to this speech already in a bad mood. We don't know what every individual person's situation is. You said earlier, somebody listens to the podcast and they tune out right away. Well, they may have a preconceived notion. Oh, this is a financial podcast. Oh, they're going to try to sell me something, blah, blah, blah. And I think it's something that I've wrestled with and worked in my own life. I've got to come in with a very kind of a blank slate to make sure that I'm taking every opportunity to learn in a situation. But it's really hard for me to recognize that other people are that same way, right? They may have their own situation going on, and I have to be cognizant of that, and I have to respect that, because they may just be having a bad day, and I can't take that personally. And it is so hard for me not to. And it sounds like it, you had that same situation happen. How do you help people get over that, Bryan? I mean, it sounds like you've helped walk her off, off the edge. What do you do for other people too?
Well, it's one, just helping point it out, because the faster you can point out that's not, something that you want to focus on, and then just keep doing that repeatedly, then you kind of work in your own brain that, oh yeah, this is a negative situation. Here's how I'm reacting to it. I need to, back off or do whatever it is that helps you get over that. But it's just being conscious of it, because otherwise you're just reacting, and your natural tendencies will take over, which is to let it affect everything.
Yeah.
And Bryan, you made me think of something too here. We have the great fortunate pleasure of working with a lot of people who have built significant wealth, right? Wealth that's significant for their lives, at least. But what we also see is, and I would bet that just about everybody listening has heard this in some variation. You go to make a decision or make a purchase for your life. Maybe it's a nice trip. Maybe it's a nice gift for a close family member. It's a new house. It's a new vehicle, whatever the case is. We've all heard that situation of, well, it must be nice. It must be nice to be able to do that. Yeah. And that's something too, where you could have spent your whole life busting your butt, working really hard to accumulate what you've accumulated. And one comment of it must be nice, all of a sudden there's shame around something that should be celebration.
Absolutely.
So I think that's another thing too, that everybody can think of a time where somebody has said that to you in some context, not letting that get to you or hinder you from doing those things that you want.
Or just answer, yes, it is.
Yes, it is nice.
They didn't see the journey though, right? I mean, that's the point. They didn't see the journey, how much hard work it took you to get there. How many times did you practice that speech in a mirror? How many times did, Bryan,
I can guarantee a lot.
Yeah. How many times have you given a presentation, practice presentations to get to where you're at? I mean, people don't see that work. They see the end result and it's like, oh, well, geez, must be nice to be that talented, blah, blah, blah.
Gosh. Yeah. The 10-year overnight success. Bryan and I joke about that all the time. It's the overnight success that took 10, 20, 30, 40 years to get there.
Yeah. So do you think that's pretty much human nature? Do we just, do we think about the negative more than the positive in a lot of ways?
Yeah, I actually put right in front of me so that I didn't say it incorrectly, but there have been so many studies around the negativity bias and how the human brain is actually wired to focus more on the negative than the positive. And a lot of this comes from, years and years and years ago. It comes from history where we had to. It was our kind of fight or flight mode. It's how we survived, is by identifying the things in our life that may negatively impact us. But as time has evolved, this can actually hinder your future, because now you're focusing on those, like we talked about, the little one or two things that might be negative or things that might be said to you, versus all of the abundance of positives and support and, the things that you get in your life that are actually uplifting. We sometimes don't pursue what we want because we're focusing on that negative. And it's really how our brains are wired, without getting into the science and the studies of it.
Yeah. And if you think about it, that's really our media today. They tend to, feed on the negative, and just a recent thing about some airline delays because of weather and whatnot. And there were thousands of flights canceled. Well, if you were to look on the internet and look at the number of flights total, and then how many were delayed or canceled, it was maybe 5%, but 5% in a news feed versus thousands of cancellations probably doesn't draw the same attention. Yeah. So unfortunately, negative sells, and you see that a lot of times, and you just got to program your brain to not accept it.
It's so funny you bring that up, because it's one of the things that I had to teach my kids early on, right? As a parent, I'm like, you need to understand that there's a purpose behind the messaging anywhere, right? No matter where the messages are coming from. But if you're seeing it online, on TV, on the radio, The message, the purpose is to sell advertising space. And so I give them this example. I said, you could see at 4:00, you'll see a promo for the news later tonight. 10 things in your refrigerator that can kill you tonight at 10 p.m. Well, now I can't go near my fridge for 6 hours because it's 4:00 in the afternoon, right? But that's how they get you, right? They want to reel you in. They want to, it's shock and awe, or the negative, like you said, Bryan. It just drives me bananas. But I had to tell them, take it with a grain of salt, see what the true message is, and you got to kind of weed through it. And that's tough.
Or maybe go eat everything in the refrigerator just in case you can't ever have it again.
Balance it all out. Yeah, it'll work out.
Oh, so true. And actually the study that was done, I wrote her name down, Alora Camacho, she's a PhD, talked about how negativity and focusing on negative thoughts and negative things in your life can actually shorten your lifespan. So when you think about this and you think about your future, and again, this is a study that we're just pulling from this gal, but realistically speaking, if people think you're easily going to get sick, your life doesn't have much purpose, you don't have anything left for you, that your best years are behind you. When you're constantly in that state of telling yourself that, that often turns out to be what is true for you. Yeah. So when you're fixating on positivity and longevity, and, that's something that Bryan mentioned a couple episodes ago about longevity, and that being a great topic, not just for our industry, but as a whole. If that's where you're focusing your time and attention on, all the opportunity and all of the possibility that life has to offer, guess what? That's the stuff that you're going to start seeing more of. So it's a shift. It's a brain shift.
Yeah. I always found this one kind of fascinating, but you get somebody that's older or maybe retired and you're talking to them and they say, well, I'd love to do this, but I'm too old. My comment is always, well, next year you're going to be 1 year older, whether you do it or not. Right. So why not do it?
Yeah.
It's I don't know what happens to people, but that crazy mentality, just kind of gets people wrapped up in it. And just because they're a number means they can't do something. Yeah. I don't get that.
And it also makes me think about, I've joked around before in different workshops that we've ran. I don't think anybody, if you stood up and turned around, I don't see an expiration sticker stuck to you anywhere. So, it's, you don't know when your time is. You don't know when your time is up. But the bottom line is focusing on possibility and just taking action. I mean, Bryan, you're dead on with that if you just keep waiting, or you keep telling yourself you're too old or too young or too busy or too whatever, you're not going to get anywhere. It's truly just, it's excuses that you're making, just to put it bluntly. It's excuses you're making for your life, and you deserve better than that. You really do.
Yeah. I wish we could just tell ourselves we're too amazing not to do it. That would be great. But it's tough to message ourselves those things and believe it sometimes.
Hey, there's a great quote from, I believe it's Marianne Williamson, and she talks about how, who am I to be smart and beautiful and daring and all of these great things. And at the end, she says, who are you not to be? And I think that's something that we should all think about and embrace too. Your future is bright, and it is what you make it. Absolutely. Unless there's something else you guys have, this is a great place to stop this podcast, because that was a great quote.
Well, I have one, as you probably found, we love quotes. And so I have one from the late, great John Wooden, who is the UCLA basketball coach, and talking about you are your commitments. And he said, things turn out best for the individuals who are determined to make the best of the way things turn out.
Love it. Love it. All right. I'm not going to end this podcast yet, though. We do need to know how to get a hold of you guys, how to get to the resources, because those people that are listening or watching you right now, they're going to want to reach out. They're going to want to say, hey, look, this positivity is contagious, which I believe it absolutely is. And I want to have more of that in my life. And I know you guys have resources for that. So can you tell them again where to get those? Yeah, absolutely. MySweetFinancial.com has got a plethora of resources. It's our retirement readiness center. It's a spot where you can access different tools ranging from mindset focus to planning for your future, to your finances, to having tough conversations with those that you love and care about, to really prepare you for your future. And the thing I'll add too is that when people think about positivity,
It's not just the woo-woo, feel good, warm, fuzzy stuff. There's purpose behind this, and there's reasons that we encourage our clients and encourage our listeners to focus on the things that you really want, on the things that are good, and on the things that create possibility for your future.
Yeah, absolutely. Bryan, Brittany, again, thank you so much for doing this, putting this podcast out there, allowing me to be a small part of it. I just enjoy this so much.
Always great to spend time with you, Eric.
Thanks, Eric.
You bet. Of course, our last thank you goes to you, the listening audience. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to the Dream Architect Life podcast with Bryan Sweet and Brittany Anderson. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This way, when they come out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. This makes it really easy to share these podcasts with your friends and family, and we would love it if you do so. We can all use a little bit more positivity in our lives. Again, thank you so much for listening today. For everyone at Sweet Financial Partners, this is Eric Johnson reminding you that possibility comes to those who create it. And we'll see you next time.